So it's maximize long-term profit by enhancing land, livestock, and human resources. And the goal is to, I'm usually always scared about maximize. That's a word I worry about, but maximize long-term profit indicates that it'll be sustainable, and we want to run the operation to its highest and best use. And we can do that by using the land, the livestock, and our human resources to their highest and best use. So we're seeking to find that optimum in that system. And that means that we invest in our employees, we invest in their training, we try to hire talent, we try to treat them well. It also means that we want to do the same thing with livestock. We want to use as good a genetics as we think will work in that system and that part of the world, and we want to provide them the nutrition and handle them in a way that will allow them to express that genetic packages within them. The land, that's the goose. We must take care of the land. Now we want to use it to as much as it can be used, but we can't go over the edge for very long. We're going to be wrong at sometimes using the land. We may be overstocked. We may not adjust quite as quickly as we should have during a drought, or come back quicker than we should, but we won't do that year after year after year. We need to recognize where we are and when we need to back up or speed ahead to get that optimum use of the land. There's a time earlier in our company where I was helping manage our cattle in 13 different feed yards. And my gosh, with that kind of variation, all killed in different packing plants, all different graders, all different systems, different areas, different weather, everything else, how do you partition out the differences to know what you're really doing or what your cattle really are? Yeah, you can get there, but now once we own the feed yard, now we had a hotel to keep full, and so we needed to change our focus as a system as a whole with all the ranches, and we needed, how can we maximize number of calves going through that feed yard on this finite land resource? So that caused us to say, well, we can add some more cows if we reduce the number of stockers that we run. Well, but if we reduce the number of stockers we run, what's going to be our drought strategy so that we don't have to sell cows in a minor drought to take care of the land? So we added a fall calving program that allowed us, because we have another ranch in the system that also runs stockers that's south of us, that we could now ship those cows for a drought mitigation strategy to them. They can ship their stockers to the feed yard, and we still keep the factory, the cow factory, intact to continue on and adjust. Why do we cull cows? And most people look at culling cows as being a genetic decision. But really, how long a cow lives and how many calves she produces during her lifetime is really lowly heritable, because there's so many environmental factors that affect it. I can do more for preg rate with a pound of cake than I can ever do with selecting a different bull to raise heifers out of. And so when we cull a cow, it's really an economic decision. And we try to color and market her to our highest and best use. And if she's done, we have a class of cattle that we won't sell to anybody. Even if they are pregnant, we won't sell them to somebody to reproduce. But we do have a class of cattle that don't fit our system that we will sell as bred cows. They're not going to bring top of the market. We're not going to ask that for them. And so that's how we look at that. My experience is that with our numbers and where we push cattle to the limit, and really they have to, we don't give them, there's not a free lunch on our ranch. They have to forage, they have to go after what they get. We don't use a lot of put in a lot of purchased inputs. We try to put in the amount that we need. But the crossbred cow will stay in our system much longer than the straight cow. Now I feel the same way about that as on an Angus or a Hereford or a Simmental or any other breed. A crossbred cow, now there could be one crossbred cow that could be better than one straight Angus or Simmental cow that could be better than all of our crossbred cows, but there's not 1,000 of them in one place. And so We crossbreed because it's been proven scientifically that there's 25% more lifetime productivity in a crossbred cow than there is in a straightbred cow of any breed.
As we talk about the beef cow-calf operation, there are three key components to preventive health regarding that entity. Specifically, we're talking about protecting that herd of cows from having other diseases come in. So that would be biosecurity. Protecting that resource of animal health from having infectious diseases come into that herd. The second leg of the stool is going to be biocontainment. If a disease does come in, are we segregating these animals into groups such that it's not going to be spread through the whole herd? Meaning, if you're going to bring in a new group of stocker calves onto your operation, I would really encourage you not to allow that group of newly purchased stocker calves to have fence line contact with your pregnant heifers. That's just not a good thing. That's putting two dominoes too close to each other. And if you have disease in the stocker calves, that domino is going to knock over your pregnant heifers. So understand, spread the dominoes apart, create biocontainment, so that if you do have something come in, you're not dealing with disease in both of those groups. And then the third leg of the three-legged stool is immunization. Vaccinating those animals with the appropriate efficacious vaccine at a time when the animal is able to respond to the vaccine. So at a time when the animal's not tremendously stressed, so that we get effective immunization to go along with our biosecurity, keeping diseases out of the herd, and our biocontainment, meaning if it gets in the herd, it's not going to spread through the whole group. Those are three criteria that is helpful to look at many aspects of infectious disease prevention to say, are we doing those three things appropriately? BVD, which is an acronym for bovine viral diarrhea virus. It's an interesting virus that causes problems in cow-calf herds throughout the southeastern United States and throughout the entire United States. One of the critical aspects of understanding this virus is it causes reproductive problems. It causes infertility, it causes abortion, it causes the birth of weak calves, and it causes calves that once they're born in the stocker or feedlot operation can be immunosuppressed and more likely to get respiratory disease. The unique thing about BVD, bovine viral diarrhea virus, this virus can actually cause some animals to look healthy but be infected for life. So if a calf, when it's developing in utero, is infected before 125 to 150 days of gestation, that calf can become persistently infected so that it considers the virus to be self. Its immune system is not responding to the virus, but it is shedding virus every day of its life in all of its secretion, snot, spit, urine, feces, all of its secretions contain virus. To control BVD, it's really a three-part process. One part of the process is if you see that you're having problems, you're having pregnancy rates lower than normal, you're seeing some abortions more than you normally would expect to see, you're seeing some weak calves, you're in a situation where you have BVD. In your operation, it may be very important to test animals. Normally, that's done by taking an ear notch from a calf, testing that animal to see if it is persistently infected, to see if it is a viral factory. If it is, you need to remove that animal from the production unit. The second aspect of managing a BVD situation is to effectively immunize animals. We specifically want to make sure that we get effective immunization of heifers before they become pregnant the first time. Because if we do that, they will not be able to produce persistently infected calves. For that heifer on your operation, would encourage vaccination as early as 4 months, certainly at weaning. Mainly those vaccines are going to protect against the respiratory disease. But then, once that animal is weaned, optimally we would desire to see 2 doses of a modified live product, whether we're talking Express or Pyramid or Bovishield, a modified live product that has been shown to provide fetal protection against BVD. The third aspect of this situation is Once you have done any necessary testing, once you've done effective immunization, then you really need to focus on biosecurity. Don't bring in animals that are going to be persistently infected to the herd.
Well, Tri-County Steer Carcass Futurity started in 1982 by 3 county cattlemen's associations, and they wanted to see what was the most profitable steer to have in the feedlot, and they've continued to pursue that. In the last 15 years, they've fed a little over 103,000 head of steers and heifers from 27 states, and most of those states are south and east of Iowa. Probably the most unique thing that they did is that they have a 10-member board that oversees the program, and 8 of those are cow-calf producers. They're cow-calf producers that also put calves in the program to try and improve profits in their herds. And so they're the ones that oversee the program, and I think that's part of the uniqueness of it. I think the other unique thing that they did, and it's paid big dividends for them the last few years, is when they do a data analysis, like we're going to visit about later, is they shared all that information with the rest of the industry. And so we took a look at data from 2002 to 2013, and a little over 77,000 head, and we ranked them within each year from the most profitable animal to the least profitable animal. And our idea going in was, with the volatility in the markets, let's look at things that we can tell cow-calf producers in the industry, here's things that you need to look ahead, that regardless of what the markets do, these are the things that are the most important in terms of profitability. One of the things I think is most unique about this is when we divided into the high 1/6 and the low 1/6, is there's about a $320 range in profit between the most profitable 1/6 and the least profitable 1/6. And I think most people don't realize there's that much variation in feedlot cattle. What are some of the main traits that distinguish whether you're going to be in this high 1/6 or the low 1/6? And I should say there are herds out there that they'll have the majority of their cattle be in the top half of profitability, and there's several really good herds, and a couple of them are from Kentucky that have done extremely well in this program and have added a lot of profit to their farming operation. First thing is the value of the calves coming in. And I would encourage cow-calf producers to be very honest with themselves. If I have a 600-pound calf, this is what I think he's worth in my own state. And then we can run projections and say, okay, this is what the market looks like in April. This is what the futures are showing cattle are going to be in August. And so we can run a pretty accurate projection. But the value of those calves at home has a big influence on the final profitability of the calf. And then the other one that most people would not think of is the warm-up average daily gain. The cattle that are most profitable have a higher warm-up gain, they have less health problems, and so health is one of the really key factors in terms of profitability. And one of the new pieces that the Futurity added to the program is that if an animal has to be treated once in its lifetime, its steaks are half a pound tougher than steaks of calves that never had to be treated, and that's through the lifetime of that animal. So health not only has a profit standpoint, but it also has a tenderness or consumer. The higher profit cattle gain more, not only just in the warm-up period, but through the entire period. And then we look at the sires. We have big differences in sires and the profitability of those sires based on how well their cattle gain, how calm their progeny are, And then marbling is something that has a big influence on profitability. Consumers want a high quality product. They're willing to pay for it, and that value then is transferred back to the cow-calf producer that retains ownership. Profitability also is impacted with disposition, and the taking care of the cattle and working the cattle calmly when they're young carries over into the feedlot. All the Futurity feedlots have went through low stress handling training. They're scored on that on an annual basis, and they do a good job. So profit is kind of the happiness index of retained ownership, and when you retain ownership, you're suddenly responsible financially for how healthy your calves are, how well they gain, how well they grade, and all those things improve the competitive status of the beef industry compared to the other protein. So I think the Futurity, its long run has continued on because of its emphasis on profit, and profit is something that's very important to the beef producers, whether they're in Kentucky or Iowa.
We've been so fortunate in Kentucky, and coming to the Cattlemen's Convention and the Beef Efficiency Conference is kind of like a family reunion. And for me, in being in charge of the tobacco settlement money, where over the years we've been so fortunate that 4 governors and all these legislators have left it alone, we've invested now $542 million in agriculture, a lot of it in the beef industry, and increased cash receipts from $3.7 to $5.7 billion in 15 years. So it's worked terrifically. The beef cattle industry, we've never done beef cattle as good as we're doing it now, and that as a result of the money we've invested in is partially, you still got to have people to get the job done. But when I think about the tobacco money and the beef cattle industry, I think about facilities, the corrals, the processing areas, the watering systems, the high traffic areas where we've eliminated the mud. We're taking better care of cattle than we've ever taken care of, and a little bit in part with the tobacco money. Most of all, I think that Kentucky Beef Network, what we've seen with Master Cattlemen, Master Grazer, Master Stocker, and all the facilitators that have gone out and not only taught but initiated change and helped. The more we learn, the more we want to learn, and that's, I think, come through the Kentucky Beef Network. I think about the IRM program, and I think about 6,000 cows being synchronized. That's the next step. That's the next step of where we go with this tobacco money. What do we invest in, and how do we invest it to make it impactful, to improve profitability for farmers, agribusiness, rural communities, the whole process. I'm convinced that we have never ever done the cattle business as good as we're doing it today, and we never can be satisfied. We just got to keep learning and do it better.